Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
All right. Welcome and good evening, everyone, to our Build Better Career session over our collaborative approach to economic mobility in the regions that we serve. We have our panel here of workforce development professionals and partners that we're going to have a really good discussion about the things in their areas and how the Build Better Careers kind of got started as a whole. So my name is Roderick Wright. I'm the director for the Build Better Careers Initiative with CALE. And now I want to introduce our VP of Initiatives.
Hello, everyone. I am Ashley Wilhelm. I'm the Vice President of Initiatives here at CALE, and our team does all of the projects and implementation for across CALE for these lovely people here. You see a lot of others that are at this conference. We've worked with a lot of different people, so we're really excited to be here and share some of the work that we've been working on for the last few years. I'm going to give you a little overview of what this project actually was or is. It's still going. And also just to give some context for you all, and majority of the time you'll be hearing from the actual locations who are implementing this work on site every day. So that's what we want to make sure we have most time for. So you won't hear from me too long, I promise. So this initiative was called the Build Better Careers Initiative. It was funded from the Truist Foundation. It is a 6-year multi-region initiative. It's across 5 different regions over those 6 years. We are partnering in each region with different workforce, higher ed institutions, and businesses, also community-based organizations, to really start looking at what are those in-demand industries and occupations and build career pathways into those with education, on-ramps and off-ramps, and also to really kind of look not just at putting people through specific education just because we want to. Where does it make sense in those occupations? And building that pipeline to make sure that individuals in the community are really receiving higher wages and long-term career opportunities and growing that economic mobility within the regions that we've been serving. If you know CALE well, you've probably seen this picture multiple times, right? This project really embodies this picture because we have worked with all of these institutions or these organizations. So we are including employers in industry groups. We are working with economic development organizations, and we are really working with the workforce agencies and trainers, like I said, to make sure that everyone is working together on that same mission to make sure that there is alignment for the pipeline development, the talent pipeline. So when we first started this project, we really wanted to think high level. What is success for us, and what are these goals? What are the goals that we wanted to achieve? And we worked with the Truist Foundation to figure that out. And they really said they want to be able to look at financial industry and how are they getting people in that pipeline and growing people within that industry, letting them know what that even means, right, to work in the financial sector. Since then, at the beginning, that was 3 years ago. Since then, we have actually expanded outside of the finance industry because we realized that that is it is included in all of our regions, but it is not. We're not keeping in that singular mindset. So we've been able to expand into different industries throughout the project. We really wanted to look at how are we changing these systems to work together, and to look at how do they work on policies together, practices together, how are they maybe the community organizations and the higher ed institutions and workforce aren't engaged with employers, or maybe they're just not actively working together in a well-oiled machine. So how do we really kind of set them up for that? And then we wanted to make sure that local employers were engaged throughout the entire process, because ultimately these individuals will be hired by those employers. We were very focused on women and BIPOC population at the very beginning of this project. Again, that's expanded as well. But of course, we are seeing that in the regions that we are working with, it is very much a working out to be women and BIPOC population anyways, but you're not excluded from this. And then really building the capacity to continue this work beyond the 3 years that we're in each region. So this was our timeline. We launched this project in 2022. We will be ending the end of 2027 with a quarter of closeout, to do all the grant closeout activities. Like I said, this is a 6-year initiative. We are in 5 different regions. Our first regions were Charlotte and Memphis, and we launched those at the very beginning, and we launched those together. Since then, we've added South Florida, which includes the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and the DMV, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Our last region will start next year, and we have not quite announced that region, but it will be very close to the DMV region, I will say. But so we're really excited about you hearing from Memphis, South Florida, and DMV. They are on very different journeys because they're very different parts of this timeline. And as we were working in each of these regions, you will probably notice just by the list that they're very different as far as, like I said, we started in the financial sector. Charlotte is very financial driven, right? They have 3 different headquarters for 3 different banks right in the Midtown area, where Memphis, it's more on the retail side. So that's where we started this project. And then we have found a lot of lessons learned in those first initial years. And we have shifted a lot of that work as we've moved to South Florida and the DMV. So here is where you actually get to hear about all of these concepts and all of these goals, but actually put into practice. So I'm going to hand it over to Roderick to moderate a few questions to our panelists.
Thank you, Ashley. So before we begin, I definitely wanted to highlight in the app, you'll see kind of the bio and the background of some of our panelists here. They are extraordinary professionals, so I can't wait to kind of dig into some of the questions so they can relate to you all the great things that are happening in each of those regions. So I would encourage you to definitely look at those bios and contact them later if you have any questions. Okay, so opening up the format here. We're here to talk about how workforce and education partnerships are evolving within this Build Better Careers initiative. So starting probably with Amanda here. First question, to just start us off, could you briefly describe through the Build Better Careers initiative, the economic and workforce landscape, and what career pathways are you guys working on or focused on?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks, Roderick. And good afternoon, everybody. Roderick promised a dance party to start this off, so I'm a little disappointed we didn't get up, listen to some good music.
My knees.
The afternoon, but we appreciate you all being here. We're excited to share what we've been doing in the DMV area. So again, my name's Amanda Wagner. I represent Employ Prince George's. We're a trailblazing workforce organization based out of Prince George's County, Maryland. But our success has allowed us to grow outside of our original area of Prince George's County, and we are representing the DMV, so the DC, Maryland, Virginia region for this project. I'm curious, just before we get started, I'd love to kind of survey the room. Who in here represents a workforce board? Do we have any workforce people here? Got one. All right. What about community college? Okay. Nonprofits? Okay, we've got a good mix. Excellent. So that's really the rich discussion that I hope we have today, is that our distinct model with Employ Prince George's and Employ DMV is that we're working through a collective impact model. And with that, we've worked in partnership. Right now, we have 253 signed MOU partners that are working in partnership with us to build these pathways. So in the past, when we've done sector strategies, when we've worked on pathway alignment, it's really been the workforce board operating in isolation of like, this is what we think we should do. Let's go forth and conquer. Through this grant, we've been able to really engage our partners and look at our job seekers holistically and say, what are the needs of our job seekers and how might we not just enroll job seekers, but advance them along a pathway towards economic self-sufficiency. And so for us, it's really been important to look at the full ecosystem and the full continuum of services that are needed. So we're talking about food banks, the clothing closets, all of the things that our job seekers need to be prepared for employment. So that's been a real distinction for us. We've also really been focused on data, thinking about what we term the ALICE community. We follow the United Way model with that. So asset, limited income constrained, but employed individuals. So we're not just talking about low income individuals, which is typically who we serve through our WIOA Title I programs, but we're looking at individuals who may be employed, but aren't able to afford the cost of living in the DMV area. And so that represents 43% of our community. And so it's not just those people who can typically take advantage of that WIOA program. It's those people that may be working full-time or maybe working more than one job, and they're just not able to connect successfully to that next step so they can truly afford to live in our region. So we're looking at all of these things when we're developing our pathways. And to Roderick's question, we're not just looking at financial services or retail. We're looking at all of our in-demand industries across the region. So healthcare, IT, really everything. And when you're thinking about the federal government, we have a lot of pathways and we want it to be as inclusive as possible, which some say is boiling the ocean and makes it more difficult. But we were really hoping that we would be able to attract as many people to these opportunities.
Stephanie?
Yes, so I work for the University of Memphis with the Center for Regional Economic Enrichment, and I am the project director of the Growth Grant. And the Growth Grant is a grant under the Tennessee Opportunity Pilot Initiative under the Tennessee Department of Human Services. And we launched our program and services in February 2023, right around the time that CALE and their initiative was starting. And our focus is serving individuals in 21 West Tennessee counties. So we serve the greater Memphis area in Shelby County, but also everything pretty much to the west of here, almost to Nashville. And to the east of here. And a lot of our population is rural. So one of the challenges we've had is laying a framework for workforce readiness training, upskilling. We've paid for individuals to go through credential training programs, short-term programs, 12 months or less. We also provide opportunities for continued education beyond the scope of what the University of Memphis typically does. All of our participants are parents. They have to be a parent to enroll in our program. And our average participant is 31 years old, around that. So we've had to look at industry a little bit differently because we're serving individuals that are coming into our program with all this life experience and challenges, and they've already had setbacks. And one of the things that we also look at, in addition to the pathways for careers and economic self-sufficiency, is also looking at barriers. So we offer supportive services and wraparound services and case management, care coordination, and things like that to hopefully eliminate or decrease as much of the barriers as we can, so we can help individuals with their career aspirations. We've worked with CALE on initiatives to help individuals with training in the banking industry specifically, getting them through BankWorks classes and helping them learn more about the banking industry and then get into those entry-level banking jobs. What ended up happening, not intentionally, is that 93% of our participants are female, which was not something we had anticipated. So in the beginning, we thought that this would be a robust experience where there's some construction and some logistics and some trucking and all of those things that we still do, but not in the numbers that we originally thought because of the demographic that we are serving. So we have about 60% of our individuals going into the healthcare field. And then the rest following shortly behind tend tend to be helping professions of some kind, bookkeeping, culinary, education services, customer service fields, and things like that. So we've been navigating that and trying to make sure those services are equal for both the rural population and also the urban participants that we serve.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly Elazar. I'm the Director of Workforce Development at OIC of South Florida. We are a nonprofit community workforce organization serving Broward and Miami-Dade counties. And so through this initiative, we're focused on careers within construction, telecommunications, climate resiliency trades, IT and supply chain logistics. And so for us, the population that we typically serve, or our largest population that we serve, are the re-entry and returning citizens through our Pathway Homes 5 grant. And so within the context of Build Better Careers, and what we're doing is that we're ensuring that we're bringing industries that we typically know are open to hiring some of our reentry folk, but then ensuring that there's a pathway for clear growth. And so one of the biggest challenges that we face in South Florida is affordability and access to training. And so ensuring that we're kind of that convener to support not only our participants, but our community partners, our institutes of higher ed, as well as our employers, to kind of be at the table to talk about the resources and the opportunities available to our communities. We are mapping out high demand roles in electrical, fiber optics, construction, like I mentioned, and healthcare. And we have a really exciting partnership with Broward Health in how we've just identified a clear way to get people into the healthcare pathway. And it's not just healthcare. When you think of healthcare, there's other occupations within that. And so really getting our communities excited and ready to get into different roles that they might not have seen themselves in. And I can talk about that a little bit later, but it's really about ensuring that there's clear trajectories, clear pathways that people can get into, that we can start to have them understand will give them self-sufficiency and financial mobility in the long term, and then allowing them to return back to school with our partnerships and articulation agreements with our local colleges and technical colleges that we work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, let's move into redefining employment opportunities with this initiative. So let's dig into how the world itself is changing and what that means for partnerships between education and industry. So my next question, and then we'll start that way and work our way down, Holly. How are you all working with higher ed institutions and training providers in the Build Better Careers initiative?
Yeah, so I'll use the example of Broward Health. Thanks, Rod. That was a nice layup. So what I did was we identified that in our community, healthcare is an industry where they're having a really hard time with recruitment. Turnover is high. In terms of just having people sustain or stay within the careers, they're having a difficult time. So Broward Health reached out to us and our partners at FIU and MDC, Miami-Dade College, to talk about ways that we can build that pipeline. And so what we've done is we've created an Earn to Learn program with them. And so what we do is we have people within pre-entry level, entry level, and then incumbent worker training models. And within this Earn to Learn programming, they get paid through OJT. So 24 hours are paid through OJT, and then 16 hours is paid training. And what they'll do is they'll go through the different occupations. So for instance, a pre-entry level training could be customer service or food services. So we'll walk them through the different opportunities that they have within those occupations within healthcare. Then we have the entry level. So it could be phlebotomy, it could be a CNA, just again, helping them to understand the different careers that they can access. And then with their incumbent workers, we're really supporting them to upskill, helping them to get into, again, the different training career tracks that could lead them to a higher job or higher paid employment opportunity, and upskill them within the system. So it's been really good for us. It's fairly new. We've had 12 people start the process and 3 people have actually been hired. And it's just been a really good journey to understand the healthcare system for our folk, knowing that, again, some of them might be very disconnected from kind of that employment sector, and just helping them to understand it. So that's kind of our model that we're working on now, which we want to kind of replicate with the rest of the occupations that we have identified within our region.
The University of Memphis and the Growth Grant is uniquely positioned because we are a program in a department, which also has other grants and other programs within it. So what's been really cool that we've seen happen through collaboration, some of the work we've done with Kale, is being able to cross over for the sake of our participants and making sure that they have the best options. We tell our participants when they come into the program that everybody's pathway is different, and it really is. They are working with their business services team, with their case manager, with their care coordinator to identify a family plan and career goals coming into the program. And then we work with each individual on a pathway that best suits their education background, where they're coming from, what they need to do. And we set SMART goals with them to plan for the future. So with our participants, sometimes that's a crossover within our own department of someone being enrolled in the growth grant and getting tuition, for example, to go to CNA school, but also they stopped out of University of Memphis or another school years ago and they were a senior status and we're able to refer them to Finish Line to finish that degree. We also have had students going through our program who have been able to utilize the University of Memphis credit for prior learning process to get credit for prior learning. So we're able to fill gaps in a very unique way because we can collaborate within our own department to get people the right mix of services that meets their individual need and process. We have a lot of people that come to us that have never finished high school, and we're able to collaborate with other institutions that offer high-set classes to get them those certificates so they can also move on to a credential training program if that's what they desire to do. So we really try to look at each individual circumstances and build around that individual and their family the right mix of services and options to get them to whatever that next goal is.
Awesome. For Employee DMV, we're really trying to change the model that and kind of business as usual. So when we think about Build Better Careers and the system that we typically operate in, at least in the workforce board, I'm ratting myself out here. Oftentimes when we're building career pathways, we're doing that in isolation. And so when we came to the table and we're thinking about how do we build better careers, it's getting everybody at the table from the beginning. And so we're starting with the end in mind. And so when we were looking and mapping the opportunities around the DC metro area, we wanted to make sure that our adult education partners, our community college partners, and our employers were all at the table together, making sure that we're informing these pathways. So in partnership with Kale, they kind of did the heavy lifting here. They were able to map out our pathways from entry-level jobs to highly skilled jobs and what those opportunities were and what you need in order to be successful and move to that next step. So a true pathway. But working with our community college partners, we were able to truly map, okay, in order to move from a medical assistant position to an RN or another field, making sure that we understand what that next credential is and how we can make sure we're layering on opportunities so people truly can advance. Because oftentimes we have people coming to our job center saying, I want to be a CNA or I want to be a nurse, but I'm going to start as a CNA. But we never see that advancement. And so it was really important for us to look at what actually is needed and do we have those opportunities in our region? So having some really honest conversations. And then the other piece of this is having our employers at the table. So if we're working in a healthcare pathway, we mapped the pathway. We worked with our educators to say these are the degree programs that are available or the short-term trainings. And then, asking the hard questions to our hospital systems and to our private providers. Would you hire somebody who came from this program? Would you hire somebody with these skills or this credential? Yes or no? And we're all in the room together. And so it can be awkward. And people, I'm sure in your regions too, of like, we don't hire people from such and such program, that's garbage. I know y'all have heard this. And so we have had those tough conversations and we're working towards a place where there's better alignment so that our students, when they complete these programs, actually have a fair shot at being competitive in the marketplace. And so that's a true shift that's happened because we have this space under this grant to really have some intentional conversations.
All right. So as you've heard, each region is unique, whether that's economically, culturally, demographically. So my next question I want to get into is talking about how tailoring workforce strategies for the community in each of these regions. So my question to the panel, through the work of this Build Better Careers project, how do you ensure that workforce initiatives reflect the distinct needs of the community than a one-size-fits-all kind of model? Start back with you, Stephanie, or stop.
I can,
Yeah.
yeah. To kind of piggyback on what Amanda was saying, we had a meeting with, Kale helped facilitate, at the University of Memphis, where we came in with some of our, community partners, some of our employers in the region, and also our training providers who are all representing healthcare. And we had an honest conversation, which had some awkward moments, but we had an honest conversation about the healthcare trajectory for an individual coming in at entry level, which usually starts with CNA. Sometimes it might be housekeeping or something like that. And what does that really look like? And it was really helpful to hear from each employer, and there were some rural employers present and some from the metro area, say, well, yes, we do take that credentialing or that license or that test result, or we don't take this one and this is why. So we could be better informed about what we were sharing with our participants and helping them plan realistically for career. Because we made a lot of assumptions with some things, thinking that, oh, if you have this, that equips you to do these things. And it might for some institutions or for some medical institutions, but not for all. So we were able to better prepare our participants. And one of the things that came out of that was we now support financially our participants with if they need recertification or if they need to get a secondary exam. So if they finish their credential training program and that particular provider has a certain exam that they utilize, but the employer they really want to work for takes a different one, we will fund them taking that next exam so they can have both of those credentials to be more employable. So we've been able to make some of those changes to better help our participants. And also we work with about 30 training providers across the region. And we made a conscious decision, which is not a popular or usual one, to not follow the ETPL list. So we don't follow the ETPL list solely. We actually vet and screen all of our own training providers. So they can be approved by us, even if they are not on the ETPL list, and they can be on the ETPL list and also be approved by us, because there were some providers that were on the ETPL list that we did not want to work with because their outcomes were not what we wanted for our participants. For example, we had a training provider we worked with that had they had a 100% completion rate and a 0 certification rate after their first year. And we asked, okay, well, why aren't they sitting for their exams? And the training provider said, well, how many would you like to sit for the exam? And our answer was 100%. So we stopped working with that provider. So also being very clear about what our true north is and what we want for our participants to have access to and the best possible outcomes possible. That's the approved training provider list that is usually approved by the higher education board through the state. So they've gone through all the steps to be recognized by the state as a provider. They typically are taking WIOA funding, possibly SNAP funding as well. Mm-hmm.
I love that you just talked about, what's your North Star? And I think that's something that oftentimes when we get new grants, we talk about the deliverables in the grant or how did you write the grant, and we don't necessarily think about what are the needs of our community? How can we use this funding to truly support the full continuum of services? And so when we were talking about our North Star, it really does have to be community led. It's not what the grant says. It's not, especially Truist is great and we're very appreciative of the funding, but Truist isn't the one, boots on the ground in the community, kind of seeing what the needs are. And so for us, when we're looking at that, it really is, we need to be data informed, but we also need to be community informed. And so we do this hybrid mix of, we look at the data provided by Kale and Lightcast and we develop these pathways, but then we pressure test it. We're working with our businesses and we're working with our providers and we're having the tough conversations in order to make sure that our North Star is relevant and that we're truly working towards the needs of our community. I mean, I just think it's not okay to have people who go through training programs and they end up in the same place and they're earning the same amount of money or just a little bit more, but they're still fighting to make that rent payment at the end of the month. We can't be okay with the status quo. We have to move forward in a way that's really intentional. And that is putting pressure on everybody in the ecosystem, including ourselves, because for so long, we were also just focused on WIOA numbers, enrollment, credential attainment, placement. But what does that actually mean for our community? And I really encourage you all to really kind of dig deep there too and say, is it really about enrollment or is it about advancement? Is it really about just meeting the measures or is it about improving your community? And having those tough conversations together really puts you at a place where you, are working more intentionally together and have better outcomes.
All right. So a key focus of this conversation is ensuring that opportunity reaches everyone in these regions. So my question to the panel would be, through the Build Better Careers Initiative, how is your organization measuring impact and accountability when it comes to your workforce initiatives? Hala, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that. So I think for us, the first thing we look at is who's getting access. Are women, youth, returning citizens, are they actually participating when we're creating these training programs, when we're creating these initiatives? So that's the first thing. And then the second piece is, are people moving up economically? When we put them through our training programs, when they access our services, is there change over time, or are they just stuck with this certification that employers are not interested in taking on, right? And so going back to the piece of listening and talking to the community, whether it's employers, your education partners or your community stakeholders, it's really understanding what's happening to the credentials and job stability in the market, and not just, looking at, what credentials can we give people right now to meet the outcomes, like Amanda mentioned. It's really having kind of those boots on the ground and understanding what's happening. And I think the third is how are the systems shifting? So our partnerships with, the local colleges, with our employers, are they creating new commitments and new pathways that we can actually stand behind? And are these partners actually strengthening where our people are going through those career pathways? And I think those three things to us measures our impact, because we can see and have more accountability towards what we say that we're doing. I think a lot of times with any initiative, there's a start and end to every project, but the collaborations still have to remain when that project ends. So how do we continue to ensure that, project X ends at the end of 2026? What happens in 2027? Do we continue that partnership? Does it look different now that the funding is gone? Or do we work together to get sustainable funding sources or more sustainable partnerships? So for us, I think it's those three things that help us to measure the impact of what we're doing. Mm-hmm.
Any of y'all want to share?
I think, for us, kind of same. The only other thing is just making sure that we're looking at our partnership engagement. So it's not just, and again, I'm guilty of this. Your partners, oftentimes I led with, we have 253 partners. Well, just signing an MOU doesn't mean you're actually a partner. And I think that, I know we're very guilty of that, of really touting that, but how many of those are actually being leveraged? Are we mapping where the need is? Do we make sure that when we refer somebody to a service that they actually have the resource? Because I know we've had job seekers before that they go to that closed closet, but it's closed, or they no longer offer that service. So making sure that we're also holding our partners accountable and we're tracking the referrals is also really important, because then you can better map and understand the community that you're serving and really align the service maps. And so I think that in addition to the traditional metrics, also looking at your partnership engagement and how valuable are they to the ecosystem that you're trying to build.
Okay. All right. So my next question to you all, in regards to lessons learned, if you can make one change to strengthen the collaboration between your employers, educators, training providers, what would that be?
Big questions at the end here, Roger.
Any lessons learned?
I think I'll piggyback on what Amanda was saying about true partnership. In the beginning of our grant, we were structured to have this very robust ecosystem that included all of these partners and community partners and engagement partners that were supposed to come along with us in the work. But as we began to clearly define our work and our true north and what was important and what our true metrics were, we started to lose a lot of those partners. And so we had to reinvent the structure of our organization to better serve the individuals, but also linking arms with individuals that wouldn't just say that they wanted to come along and make sure that people were gainfully employed and make sure that they were financially stable and make sure that they, had their barriers removed, but are actually willing to step in that trench with us and figure it out, have the messy conversations, fail forward, all of those things. And that really changed a lot of those relationships. I think that was one of the biggest things that I've learned is, you may not know in the beginning what your ultimate product or what your ultimate project will be when you're starting something brand new, as we were with the growth grant. But as that became clearly defined, we had to be real about who our partners would be and could be based on what those goals were. And when we were able to make some of those very, very hard decisions, our program began to thrive because we were cutting away some of the things that weren't beneficial for the population we were serving. And truth be told, I mean, talking about serving low-income individuals and economic mobility and employment and staying employed and, being in a position on your job and your career where there's opportunity and room for advancement sounds fantastic. But when you dig deep and have some of those nitty-gritty conversations, sometimes you realize that individuals aren't as into that work as you would think they are. So being able to be honest about, what you're bringing to the table, what your expectations are, and also expecting your partners, whether that be training provider partners, employer partners, to be honest about the same has been really helpful to us because we'd rather walk away from the table and say we're speaking a different language than to try to make it fit when it really doesn't fit.
I think, in that conversation and sometimes I wish when I'm on a panel that I can ask the audience a question. But one thing that we're struggling right now is really like skills alignment and being able to adapt at the speed of business. And so you all know as well as I do that, with the implementation of AI and just the current state of our workforce, that things are changing so rapidly. I mean, I think businesses are changing their needs and their job descriptions like every 6 months. And then our training providers are still operating in the same training model that they had, 2 years ago. And, I don't know how to facilitate a conversation, or maybe I'm facilitating the conversation, but there's roadblocks to quickly be able to adapt these programs to align with what our businesses say. So we're at the point now where we're at the table and we're in agreement that these are the skills, but there's often times where we can't change that without going through this process, which, takes 6 months, or we need approval at the state or county level. And so that is one roadblock for us that I think we're in agreement that we have to move quicker, but there is kind of some red tape that's keeping us from advancing at that pace. And so I'm not sure if any of you all have suggestions there, and maybe we can talk after, but that's an area where we're struggling at this point.
All right. You good? Okay. My last question to the panel: what gives you the most optimism about the future of workforce and education collaboration in your region, specifically through this initiative? Any takers?
I would say being here.
Okay.
I think the work that we do is challenging. It's hard. You can have those days where you're asking yourself, is it worth it? But being in a community with individuals doing similar work across the country and seeing everybody's little piece of that work and how we are all doing our part in the bigger scheme of things to help individuals and adult learners and people, reach those levels of success and stability is encouraging. And I think, that's one of the challenges also about this work. It can feel sometimes, especially when you're doing something that's innovative and different and scary, and there's all these lessons you have to learn along the way, it can feel very isolating. But then being in community like this, you're, oh yeah, there's other people that care about this random thing I care about that seems like it's the world to me. But there's other people that feel the same way. And that's the kind of thing that keeps us going. And then the other thing I would say with the scope of our program, we've enrolled to date around 2,400 families across West Tennessee. We have incentives attached to our program where we're incentivizing individuals to go to training and complete their training programs and get a job and stay on that job for 6 months or, 30 days and 6 months and get a high quality job at a higher pay rate with opportunity and benefits and all of that. And we survey ourselves regularly. We ask our participants about their experiences. We ask them about their training provider experiences and the financial education they're receiving and the workforce readiness experiences they're having. And the thing that comes across echoes time and time again, loudly through all of our feedback and our promoter scores is not actually in line with the money at all or the incentives. It's actually confidence. That's the word we hear the most is I feel confident. I now feel like I can. I was doing this by myself and I didn't know how. Someone explained it to me. Someone helped me. Someone showed me where to go or someone introduced me to this. And that is my grounding, I think our grounding point, because we know that we're giving people something that is much more than just a financial incentive or removing a barrier, but it's also a change in who they are as a person that will carry them long after they're no longer in our program and are moving forward with whatever they do next in life.
Rock,
Yeah.
paper, scissors.
Yeah. I would say what makes me optimistic is the collaboration that you see happening, especially in our region now. For the first time in a long time, we're seeing, higher ed workforce organizations and employers moving in the same direction and understanding that our outcomes are shared outcomes. It's not just OIC trying to get people employed, that this impacts all of us. And so I think that collaboration itself is what makes me optimistic about seeing what we've been doing through the Build Better Careers and actually watching the collaboration happen, watching our partners just talk and being able to convene them and see that there's rich conversation and rich action that's coming out of these meetings. And I think the community feels it, right? Because we're involving them, we're having them come to the table through focus groups and listening to them and really having them involved in the process. I think that's what makes me optimistic, that we're not just building programs and offering services that is tone deaf. We are actually bringing those who it impacts to the table in order to kind of, go through this work. Yeah.
Well, I should have gone first because same. I think the shared sense of urgency is really exciting. It's a moment where we're not waiting for the changes in Pell or the changes in CTE and like what's going to happen. Are we going to get an instruction letter? People are at the table because they care and they know right now we have to more than ever look at the return on investment. Every dollar spent, what's the outcome? And we're all in it together, and that's really, really empowering.
Okay. So I lied. I have one more question. I know they hate me. Last question. So as we're wrapping this up and we're talking about lessons learned in each region, if you could leave this audience with one action they can take to build better careers in their own communities from your experience, what would that one thing be?
I'm not going to let you jump. No, I'm just kidding. I would say for me, it would be to shift from program thinking to pathway thinking, to make sure that you are looking at not just what the grant offers, but what your community needs. Holly, you just said that too. So yeah, really making sure that you're looking at the pathway and the sustainability of the work you're doing.
Yeah. I would say, because I'm a policy person, and I came onto the grant in 2022, and we always joke that we were building the airplane and flying it at the same time. So we were making policy and forms and applications and all of these things. We had nothing. We started the program from zero. And one of the things that I think has helped us a lot is we've built our policies and processes on purpose with enough gray to keep us from being handcuffed when we need to be loose. So if you have the ability to do that in your programs, in your systems, allow yourself that room in gray. Because we've had situations come up where a family has a need that's preventing them from moving forward, and that policy has just enough vague language in it that allows us to do some innovative things. And I think we've done that really well, is think innovatively about how to serve along that way of having multiple options for an individual, multiple ways to solve one problem. And we might have two participants with the same problem, and we're able to solve it in two very different ways because we have enough loose language in our policies to give our staff some empowerment to solve problems and think differently.
I said it earlier, but I think it's just investing in partnerships and not just programs. I mean, again, programs have a start and end date. And so when you solidify the partnerships with your employers, institutes of higher ed and other community organizations, that lasts longer than an actual program. And you can figure out how to work together and just build on whatever the community needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions for our panelist? Oh, let's start here. You had your hand up first.
That's a good question. So she asked, when did we decide to move away from the ETPL list and how do we vet training providers? That was a decision made from the beginning. So we went into it saying we're gonna have growth program approved training providers, and this is how we're gonna do it. So we actually interview the training provider partners. We then they do an application with us, and they submit all of their information. We collect, all of the pertinent, price list for their classes, all the offerings that they offer as a school. We do look at the ETPL list and just refer back to it as reference if they are on it, and then we do a site visit. An in-person interview on site to see the site, see the training provider offerings, how it's set up. And that's how we go by it. We also do not have MOUs or contracts with our training providers. So we treat them like vendors. So we don't make any promises on enrollment. We don't recruit on their behalf. They are approved by us. So if at some point we determine a training provider not to be a good fit, we can end the relationship, which we've had to do. So that gives us the freedom to do that. Mhm.
You mentioned
Mhm.
that sometimes partners are not pro partners and keeping track of services. Like what systems we use to manage that?
Yeah, we have a proprietary system that we use in partnership with Empire OneFlow that we built. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Have you been surprised by your basic housing
Yeah, so we have a very robust system of supportive services and emergency assistance. And one very specific element of that is mental health and wellness. So we built that into the grant at the beginning, knowing that that would come up. So we were not surprised when it does, but we also consider sort of a hierarchy of needs approach to each participant. So they do get pre-screened, enrolled, and we develop some goals with them when they come into the program. That's one of the first things we do. Part of that is also a mental health and wellness assessment where they self-assess and answer some questions about how they feel about themselves, and it gives us kind of a score on where they are. And we have had to not deny enrollment, but deny services to someone in favor of just getting them support first, because they were not mentally, emotionally in a place to be stable enough to go to school, to enroll in a program, or be sent to work. So we try to kind of rank where they are. Obviously, and that's one of the things we had to learn the hard way. Somebody who is homeless and sleeping in their car is probably not a person you can send to work tomorrow. We got to deal with other things first. So we do that. So we will, connect them with our care coordination team, which has connections with community partners. If that person needs a temporary place to live first, or they need to go see counselor or therapist. We've had situations we've had to call the crisis unit for individuals that needed intensive, immediate support. So we'll do those things first, and we sort of put the career goals and objectives on the back burner until we can get the person hopefully to a place of stability so they have a higher chance of success, because we know that if we just push them through the system and say, oh yeah, go just go get a job or go ahead and enroll in this training program, we're going to get a call from that training provider within the week and they're going to say they stopped showing up. So how do we help them, with getting them the most opportunity for success as we possibly can by bringing in some of those other organizations, and because that's not our field, but we know where to send them when we need that help. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Credibility.
Yeah. Like, why'd you send us this person who never shows up to work? Exactly.
Any other? Yes.
How the vision that you're helping treat people for, how can we manage further? Do you have any tips for how you navigate that? Because obviously it's not as beneficial to put people into a job that statistically they're going to leave within 2 or 3 years. So just, yeah, it's something that it's very real for I think a lot of us. Any tips for how to navigate?
Yeah, so for what we're doing with Broward Health specifically, we're really engaged with our career specialist there, and she'll walk us through kind of those skill sets that they find that within, 6 months someone will stop coming to work because of X, right? And so we have that conversation about, okay, so what is it that we need to do to train them in the earlier stages, whether it's a different certification, if it's we need our workforce navigators to come in and provide initial assessments, because maybe there's something that we still haven't figured out or they haven't shared that they're going through. And so it's really just unpacking that piece. First, the participant, our student, like what is it that's happening that they're not getting past that threshold? And then what training do we need to do to try to get them past that hump? And sometimes it's just that. It might just be they continue to have an issue with, I don't know, the math section of the part of their job. And so how do we then make that not a necessary thing for the role, or maybe it's something that we can kind of figure out if there's a way that they can work that into training so that they can get past that hump, right? And so really her name's Evelyn. We work with Evelyn to really understand like where is it in their career path, because it's a year of on-the-job training that we do with them. Where is it that they're falling off? And how can we get to that place before that even happens to train them or coach them or have a workforce navigator on site to help them through whatever challenges that job is giving them. We've implemented workforce navigation or workforce navigators as opposed to case managers. So the roles will change to be a little bit more job coaching and on the job so that we can, again, try to get there before things fall apart, for lack of a better word. Just because we know that, again, the participants we serve have barriers, right? And so although we want to make sure that we're navigating them before they get into employment, it's understanding what typical things are they seeing that our students or our employees are having difficulty with and trying to get there before it happens, if that makes sense.
Are those workforce navigators that are on site, those people that are appointed by the employer, or are you able to, negotiate some time to onboard them with your team and your policies? Like, how does that happen?
So they work with us. They're our OIC employees, and so they're involved from the beginning of the process. So they're the ones who do the intake and assessment. So we do ONET, BESI, LSCMI, and other assessment tools. And so we'll go through that. So they've known the participant from the beginning, and then as we identify them to get placed or hired, I'm using Broward Health as the example here, but when they are placed with Broward Health, they already know kind of the path and the journey. So then it's not a stranger who's coming to support them through any issues throughout their employment journey. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. One more. Yes.
And then the other is probably the mismatches of interests and the jobs that people want to train them for.
I think for us, because we have a strong community network, a lot of times we're not the first point of entry for our job seekers. They're coming from our partners and they're being referred to us through that. And so that's really making sure you have strong community partners that trust that you're going to be sending their neighbor to a training where they're going to have a strong result. That's been really important for us to develop those strong relationships. Your second part of your question was the skill sets.
Mismatch.
Yeah, so I think on the front end, and I think Holly said this too, and so did Stephanie, the assessment on the front end is really important because oftentimes people like want to be what they see. So their dad is a welder or a truck driver or whatnot. So that's what they come in with. But after that thorough assessment, we're able to kind of show them you actually have a skill set or an aptitude for this. Let us expose you to this pathway, and let's try it on before we send you to training. So we do a job match beforehand to do a shadow and just make sure like, yes, this is the pathway that I want to go into.
Yeah, our program starts with Growth Academy, which is a workforce readiness training program, 11 classes that each participant takes when they enroll. And some of those classes deal with things like communication, adapting to change, finances, there's a lot in there. So they've done their enrollment, they've done a family plan where they've identified goals, they're going through Growth Academy. So most of the time and they're also doing a career assessment at the beginning as well. So by the time they're getting to a place where they can choose a training program, they've gone through all of those other steps. So they've had some self-exploration time. And that career assessment that we utilize is very straightforward. And it literally says you should avoid these things. You would be really good at these things. So we use that as a tool to have open conversations about aptitude. You might think you want to do that job, but based on your personality type or based on your past experiences, based on the kinds of things that make you happy in your work environment, you will be miserable at this job. So let's talk about some connectors here and things that maybe you hadn't considered. And one of the things that we do a lot of is just education. A lot of people know the jobs that they've had friends, family members do, and that might be the only thing they know because they've just never been exposed to other options. So we try to do a lot of exploration as well.
Okay. If you guys have any other questions, please catch them after because we are at time. But I thank our panelists for their perspectives and thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.